Obama administration, it had become clear that for-profit colleges were taking advantage of students. And one of the ways that they were doing so was by lying to them and defrauding them with certain recruiting techniques. So for instance, they would essentially convince students that it was worth it to take out massive amounts of debt, student loan debt, because 95% of students from such programs will graduate and find gainful employment. Well, to give you an example of how deceitful they were, in one instance, recruiters would tell students, if you take our sous chef program, you will be gainfully employed. A high percentage of students end up graduating and getting a great full-time job. Well, it turns out that they counted fast food workers into that equation. Right, so they would inflate numbers.
Is the sous chef the one that makes the quarter pounder and cheese, or the chicken McNuggets?
Neither one of those things.
Okay.
Sous chefs usually work in restaurants, right? So look, that's one example, but they defrauded so many students, and it led to such a disaster that major for-profit institutions actually shut down under the Obama administration. Finally, Obama did something about them. Well, Obama also promised to forgive their debt, because they didn't end up getting degrees from reputable institutions, their schools shut down. And so the whole point of it was, let's do the debt forgiveness so these students can move on with their lives. Well, Betsy DeVos is now gonna undo all of that progress because she is in bed with these for-profit colleges, and I'll prove how in just a second. Now, DeVos proposed to curtail Obama administration loan forgiveness rules for students defrauded by for-profit colleges, requiring that student borrowers show they have fallen into hopeless financial straits or prove that their colleges knowingly deceive them. So essentially, these students who are drowning in student loan debt now have to do their own investigation and prove how they were defrauded, okay? And then on top of that, they'd have to prove that they are in dire financial straits. First of all, I don't care if they're in financial straits or not. I don't care if the person who was defrauded is a millionaire. If they were defrauded, criminally defrauded, that debt should be forgiven.
So, look, in some of the standards that they talk about, they say, we don't want the entire school punished for what might be unofficial or offhanded comments. So if one of the students says, hey, they promised to make me CEO, well, that's not good enough evidence, and we don't know if that's true, et cetera, right? But if you put it into your advertising literature, well, that's better evidence. Okay, so that part is fair, right? In my opinion. But when you put the burden on the students to prove intent,
exactly,
that's nearly impossible. So you have to show that, okay, they're not doing any of the things that they promised, plus they meant to trick me.
You're right, it is an impossible legal standard. And more importantly, look, this applies to students who went to for-profit colleges that had to shut down because investigations found that the fraudulent behavior was so widespread, like they couldn't even pay the settlements, and they had to go. So to give you an example, ITT Technical Institute and Corinthian colleges, those were two massive for-profit college chains that had to shut down. So those students, under this new proposal by Betsy DeVos, will not get their debt forgiven. And by the way, here's another thing that you have to keep in mind. So let's go to graphic 36. The department would also require that relief applicants divulge personal information that could have impacted their job prospects beyond their college experiences, including drug test results,
that's unacceptable,
health concerns, and performance evaluations. She is a bad person. She is the definition of swamp. She is the biggest swamp monster. She has packed the education department with former for-profit college executives and employees. DeVos advisors include her senior counselor, Robert Idle, and Diane Jones, a senior advisor on post-secondary education, both of whom worked for Career Education Corporation, a company that operates for-profit colleges, and reached a $10.25 million settlement with the New York Attorney General over charges that it had inflated graduates' job placement rates. Also, the department's general counsel, Carlos Munoz, worked as a consultant for the company. So these are all for-profit college cronies.
So look, if you said the Obama standards were too lenient and it was too easy for people to charge fraud, and you wanted to tweak them in the ways that I talked about earlier, that's a one conversation. But that's not this conversation, because this conversation is punitive against the students. So if a college was so corrupt, they went under because of all their bad practices, they say, not good enough evidence. You need to prove that they had bad intent against you. Okay, all right, I'm gonna put that aside. So let's say you say, well, look, that's just a legal definition of how to prove your case or whatever. But when then they say, no, not only do you have all this onus, and by the way, you went to a BS college and got nothing for it. I don't know how you come up with attorneys that prove the criminal intent or the bad intent of this giant institution with their army of lawyers. But on top of that, we get to investigate your life and judge you. So you better watch yourself. You come for any of these private colleges, they're gonna come for you. We're gonna find out if you ever smoked marijuana, if you ever did anything wrong, and this allows them to do that.
Look what this woman thinks about you, right? If you're a college student who was criminally defrauded by these institutions, she is brushing you off as a druggie, as someone, by the way, you have to share your health issues in order to make your case. Oh. I mean, come on.
I mean, that's just nothing but intimidation.
A woman who hasn't had to work a day in her life. She's never had to work a day in her life. The only thing she's done as education secretary is try to dismantle any protections for students who have been screwed over by for-profit colleges and other institutions in the country. That's all she's ever cared about. And what did she do to education in Michigan? Destroyed it.
So the president of the National Student Legal Defense Network, whose job is to protect students, said this gives fraudulent institutions de facto immunity.
Exactly.
Immunity. So then, two last things here, real quick. She said, "Well, no, it's okay. I'm saving taxpayers $700 million that otherwise we'd have to give these students who were defrauded." They were defrauded. So that's like saying, "Oh no, it's okay. I took all the cops off the street, and so I'm saving taxpayers $700 million. Oh, you got your house robbed. That's your problem, not my problem. I save taxpayers money." No, you didn't save them money. That's not how it works. The function of the government is to protect the citizens, both through cops and through regulation of fraudulent businesses that rob them blind.
By the way, there's one other component to this. She's not done yet, okay? So the Obama administration realized that a lot of these for-profit colleges force students to sign agreements, arbitration agreements. So the students would never be able to take them to court, and the details of arbitration would never be public, right? Betsy DeVos is trying to undo that. So students would essentially, if they want to go to certain institutions, they would have to sign these agreements, and then they would have absolutely no legal power against them if there is wrongdoing by these institutions. Yes, they can do arbitration, but it is not the same as being able to file, let's say, a class action lawsuit or just a lawsuit against the institution.
Okay, and finally, I want to come back to what Anna pointed out about the people who work in the department. How can you trust that the department is actually looking out for the students when the top officials are career employees of the for-profit colleges they're supposed to be regulating? So I'll give you an example that, again, maybe it's a little easier to relate to, and I'm sorry that I'm picking Honda out of a hat here, but the Honda didn't actually do this, just to be clear. Let's say they had a problem with their brakes, and there's a regulatory body that's supposed to regulate Honda. And they say, oh, don't worry, we're gonna investigate Honda. And in order to investigate them, we found their ex-CEO, their ex-chief financial officer, and their ex-head of public relations, and they're investigating Honda. You'd be like, what? Why did you pick the 3 people that worked for Honda to investigate Honda? That seems like that might be a conflict of interest. That seems like gives me a little bit of doubt as to whether you have our best interest in mind or Honda's best interest in mind. Mm-hmm. So I just feel like this may be a little bit easier to understand. Again, Honda didn't do anything wrong. Okay, in this case, she's like, yeah, I'm gonna get all these people who have made all this money from these companies to regulate those companies, and by the way, later they will go and work for those same companies again.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
So this is what the swamp looks like. 2 easy ways to follow the Young Turks. One is hit the subscribe button down below, then you're a TYT subscriber. And second is ring the bell. And when you do that on YouTube, you're notified of our videos.